Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Technical Assistance Network for Children's Behavioral Health, Cultural and Linguistic Competence Peer Learning Exchange. The Peer Learning Exchange is a webinar with, or monthly call with topics focusing on culture, health, equity, and disparities in children's behavioral health. Topics are generated by you, individuals working in or being served by the behavioral health organizations and partnering with system of care states and communities. The TA Network, as it is known, is the National Training and Technical Assistance Center for Children's Behavioral Health for the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Today's webinar is titled Cultural and Behavioral Health Equity Considerations for Wraparound Practice. We will be learning how to integrate culture into wraparound practice so that we can improve behavioral health equity. My name is Catalina Booth, and I am the Executive Director of the Center for Community Learning in Miami, Florida. The Center for Community Learning is focused on providing training, technical assistance, research, and program evaluation on issues affecting diverse and traditionally underserved communities. As a partner in the TA Network, the Center for Community Learning provides technical assistance in the area of cultural and linguistic competence. Our expertise focuses around issues of language assistance, CLAS standard implementation, community capacity building, diversity and equity training, behavioral health literacy, and reducing behavioral health disparities. My co-presenter is Selena Webster-Bass. She's a native of Jacksonville, Florida, and has served as a health advocate for over 15 years. While serving under the Jacksonville System of Care Initiative, SAMHSA Implementation and Expansion Grant, Selena Webster-Bass worked as a cultural and linguistic competence educator for over 5 years. In this role, she facilitated professional, family, and youth CLC professional development. She conducted CLC organizational self-assessments, integrated system of care core values in wraparound care coordination, and promoted multicultural community engagement. Her background is in public health, cultural and linguistic competency, behavioral health, and faith-based engagement. She is certified in adult and youth mental health first aid. Selena works with the various community organizations promoting mental health literacy. She's currently the CEO of Voices Institute, a consulting curriculum development and research group focused on multicultural consciousness, equity, and well-being. She's a core partner in the Technical Assistance Network for Children's Behavioral Health. This presentation is being recorded, so your lines are muted right now to help eliminate the background noise. Feel free to use the chat box to type in any questions or comments during the presentation. Following our presentation, we'll open the lines for further question and discussion. And one thing to keep in mind is at the end of the webinar, don't immediately disconnect when we've ended the webinar because you will receive a quick survey, and we promise it'll only take a few minutes. So once we've concluded and closed out the session, stay online for a minute or two and you will see the survey pop up. So without further ado, let's get started. And as this learning community is hosted by the University of South Florida, the Center for Community Learning, and Voices Institute, partners in the National TA Network for Children's Behavioral Health, operated and coordinated through the University of Maryland. It is our goal that in today's webinar, you will learn why it is important to integrate culture into wraparound practice. In order to reach that goal, we will cover 3 learning objectives. First, we'll learn how the CLAS standards align with wraparound principles. And just so you know, this will not be an in-depth look at the CLAS standards. We do have a series of webinars on the CLAS standards. And in your chat box, TR is going to put a link to the YouTube channel where you can find more in-depth CLAS standard webinars. But we're going to look at the CLAS standards through the lens of wraparound principles today. We will learn how to implement the CLAS standards in wraparound practice, and you'll learn how to apply tools designed to help you integrate wraparound into the individual's or family's culture. Our first section will cover how the national standards for culturally and linguistically appropriate services, also known as the CLAS standards, align with wraparound and wraparound values. And I will present this section. In the second section, Selena will cover how you can use the standards in your wraparound practice. And in that section, she will present some practical tools for considering and implementing cultural considerations to reduce behavioral health disparities in your practice. Let's begin with some foundational knowledge. What are the CLAS standards? The National Standards for Culturally and Linguistically Appropriate Services in Healthcare were originally published in 2000 by the Office of Minority Health. They are based on Title VI of the Civil Rights Act and the Presidential Executive Order. According to the Office of Minority Health, they are intended to advance health equity, improve quality, and help eliminate care disparities by providing a blueprint for individuals and healthcare organizations to implement culturally and linguistically appropriate services. In 2010, the Office of Minority Health began an initiative to enhance and improve the CLAS standards. And in 2013, we got the current standards, which are known as the Enhanced National CLAS Standards for Health and Healthcare. There are 15 CLAS standards divided into 4 categories. The first category is designated as a principal standard, and that's the one, and then there are 3 themes. The first theme is governance, leadership, and workforce. Communication and language assistance is theme 2, and theme 3 is continuous quality improvement and accountability. So another way to think about it, the CLAS standards are as a starting point for your organization. They are guidelines set in place by the federal government, with the exception of the language assistance requirements, which are an actual requirement for anybody receiving federal funding. The best way for us to think about them and the best way to use them in wraparound practice is as a roadmap to health equity. We will teach you ways to integrate them with your wraparound practice so that you are effectively using the tools and techniques from the CLAS standards in your practice. The purpose of the CLAS standards and their overarching goal is to provide effective, equitable, understandable, and respectful quality care and services that are responsive to diverse cultural health beliefs and practices, preferred languages, health literacy, and other communication needs. Put another way, the purpose of the CLAS standards is to improve health equity through services that are culturally responsive. So a key component of the CLAS standards and a key component to understanding how we can use them as a tool for improving health equity is understanding what definition of culture they use and how that should affect our practice. In a blueprint for advancing and sustaining CLAS policy and practice, the Office for Minority Health defines culture as the integrated patterns of thoughts, communications, actions, customs, beliefs, values, and institutions associated wholly or partially with racial, ethnic, or linguistic groups, as well as with religious, spiritual, biological, geographic, or sociological characteristics. Traditionally, in the past, we've looked at culture in very limited circles of just race and ethnicity, and perhaps some social characteristics or geographical characteristics. But the CLAS standards, through this expanded definition, take a much broader view of culture to include religious beliefs, spiritual beliefs, biological characteristics, and sociological characteristics. Which means then that the reason they do this, it's an important definition because it takes into consideration the fact that culture is dynamic in nature and individuals may identify with multiple cultures over the course of their lifetime. It reflects the complex nature of culture as well as the various ways in which culture has been defined and studied across multiple disciplines. So when we combine the principal CLAS standard with this definition of culture, the expanded definition of culture, we get a better understanding of the true purpose of the CLAS standard if we plug those two things together. So the purpose of the CLAS standard is to provide effective, equitable, understandable, and respectful quality care and services that are responsive to diverse customs, beliefs, values, and institutions related to race, ethnicity, language, religion, spirituality, biology, geography, sociological characteristics, and more. So this helps us understand what a broad view and what the whole purpose is that it helps us take a holistic view of the person. So what does this have to do with wraparound? How does CLAS standards fit in with Wraparound. On the screen, you have the values that we focus on in Wraparound. The 10 values of family, voice, and choice, team-based, natural supports, collaboration, community-based, culturally competent, individualized, strength-based, persistent, and outcome-based. And oftentimes, the CLAS standards are relegated to a separate and distinct silo, so to speak, from the work that we do on a daily basis in Wraparound Practice. We separate our Wraparound values and the CLAS standards into two separate buckets, and only bring in and only consider cultural considerations under one value of the culturally competent. However, the reality is that the values and purpose of the CLAS standards are already ingrained and interwoven into the Wraparound values. And we've created for you a tool that you can download, and we'll look at parts of the tool. Tara, there's no need to pull it up because I have it on the next few screens already, slides. But for those of you who want to download it, you'll see in the center of your screen, right next to the slide, there's a series of files available for download. The very first one is called Wraparound and CLAS Alignment. Please feel free to download that and to open that up because it is a good way. What this document does, we'll take a look at what it looks like. What the document does is it takes all 10 of the Wraparound principles and it shows which CLAS standards would apply under that principle, or which CLAS standards can help you implement that Wraparound principle. For example, the Wraparound principle of family, voice, and choice can be seen in the principal CLAS standard. Family, voice, and choice is about getting perspectives of family, youth, and child intentionally and prioritized, and planning grounded in family members' perspectives. Well, the principal standard of the CLAS standards, CLAS standard number 1, calls organizations and individuals to provide effective services that are responsive to diverse cultural health beliefs, which is exactly the same thing that you want in family, voice, and choice. Similarly, CLAS standard number 9 calls organizations to establish culturally and linguistically appropriate services, appropriate goals, policies, and management accountability, and infuse them through the organization's planning and operations, and to create conflict and grievance resolution processes. For example, one organization in Broward County implements these two values very well by creating a CLC and social marketing committee that has families on them and youth in them. That way, from the ground up, the families and the youth diverse cultural health beliefs and other considerations are considered when creating plans. Similarly, in Virginia, many Wraparound teams include members of faith-based communities for those individuals who have been identified as having a deep connection with a faith-based organization. And that way their cultural health beliefs are integrated in their Wraparound plan, and the family voice and choice is truly brought to life. Another example that I wanted to show you, so the document that we created for you goes through each and every one of the values. Another one that is that's good to look at is value number 4 of the Wraparound values, which is collaboration. Team members work cooperatively and share responsibility for developing, implementing, monitoring, and evaluating a Wraparound plan. The plan reflects a blending of team members' perspectives, mandates, and resources. The plan guides and coordinates each team member's work towards meeting the team's goals. Well, there's CLAS standards that call for exactly that. It asks organizations to recruit, promote, and support a culturally and linguistically diverse governance, leadership, and workforce that are responsive to the population in the area, and to conduct regular assessment of community health assets. So if you have in place CLAS standard number 3 and CLAS standard number 12, you're well on your way to establishing collaboration in a way that is culturally sensitive and culturally responsive and meets the diverse needs of the population you serve. What are the benefits of aligning? What are the benefits of looking at Wraparound values in a parallel track to the CLAS standards and implementing these jointly? Well, children, youth, and adults and families from diverse cultural backgrounds continue to face disparities in accessing effective behavioral health care. One of the many factors leading to disparities is the failure of behavioral health organizations to use the individual's or family's culture as a strength in developing the service plan. Culturally and linguistically appropriate services are increasingly recognized as effective in improving quality of care and services. Therefore, behavioral health organizations implementing wraparound should operationalize the principles of cultural and linguistic competence and behavioral health equity in the wraparound plan itself. Therefore, this tool that we're looking at right now and the ones that Selena will discuss are ways to help you plan for and organize that at each step of the service delivery process. The national CLAS standards are specifically designed to provide a blueprint for individuals and healthcare organizations to implement culturally and linguistically appropriate services. The CLAS standards provide a strong framework for operationalizing these principles through the strategic planning and service delivery process. Integrating the CLAS standards and wraparound principles together into strategic planning and service delivery facilitates this process and improves an organization's ability to address healthcare disparities. The CLAS standards can provide behavioral health organizations with a systematic method of integrating culture and behavioral health equity at all levels of the organization and service delivery in a comprehensive, thorough, standardized, skills-based, and person-centered way. Therefore, the benefits of aligning and incorporating wraparound values and wraparound planning with the CLAS standards is reducing disparities by using the individual's or family's culture as a strength, applying culture-based wraparound in a consistent manner across all services, and providing a systematic method integrating culture and behavioral health equity at all levels of the organization and service delivery. And one way that we encourage in this webinar, we're going to focus, as you all know, there are 4 levels in the system of care. There's the policy level, frontline practice level, community level, and management level. With the remainder of today's webinar, we're going to focus on implementing the CLAS standards and culture-based practice in the frontline practice level. If you want to know and you want to learn more about how to implement the CLAS standards on a policy level, management level, or community level, we urge you to go to the YouTube channel that we will post in the chat box if we haven't already done that. So look for that in the chat box. And the goal is to implement CLAS standards at all levels of care. And in the next section, we'll focus on the frontline practice. And so with that in mind, Selena, I will turn to your section.
Thank you, Catalina. All right, so we'd like to introduce you to some processes and tools that may be used in eliciting cultural information from youth and families within a system of care. And so we will provide an overview of the following processes and tools. The high fidelity wraparound strengths needs cultural discovery, the New York Mental Health Hygiene Citywide Cultural Assessment, the HEEADSSS Adolescent Assessment, the FICA Spiritual Assessment. We'll also discuss the Health Beliefs Toolkit and the Cultural Formulation Interview with the DSM-5. So a critical component of eliciting cultural information is practicing active and affirmative listening. And so listening is not just about words, but it's also about emotions and feelings that our youth and families may be experiencing. And so by acknowledging these emotions and feelings, we validate our families, we demonstrate empathy and respect. And so this symbol is the Chinese character for listening. And there are several components to this symbol. On the left side is an ear, which we use for hearing. On the right side, from top to bottom, is a cross-looking symbol and an eye symbol, which combined means to be observant as if you had 10 eyes. The one line in the middle refers to undivided attention. being present or attending to, and at the very bottom is the heart, so listening with our hearts in addition to our ears and to our eyes. So as we talk about these different tools and assessments, I think it's important to keep in mind the importance of being present with our families and practice active listening as we're, and affirmative listening as we are eliciting information. So the first process that we like to highlight is the high fidelity wraparound strengths, needs, and culture discovery. This is a part of the Varun group, and so we are not going to go into a lot of details about this process. We do recommend that you enroll in a wraparound course to learn about the specifics of implementing the strengths, needs, and culture discovery, but we do want to highlight it because it's an important part of the wraparound process. So during the engagement period of wraparound, care coordinators and family youth support partners should first of all explain the purpose of wraparound, explain the wraparound core values, and then the next step is the strengths, needs, and culture discovery. And so the strengths, needs, and culture discovery is an uncovering. It's an approach to understanding the family's background, the family's assets or their strengths, their needs, and their culture across life domains. The care coordinator or family or youth support partner should decide who should be involved in the strengths, needs, culture discovery process. Will the process involve the entire group or individuals? And some things to consider, maybe if the parents are in conflict, if the youth maybe is part of the LGBTQ population and is not out to their parents or to their caregivers. So there are some considerations in terms of determining how this information should be elicited from youth and families. Methods for interviewing the caregiver and youth, whether it will be a formal, structured interview or whether it will be a relaxed chit-chat conversation. And then how will consensus be built around the strengths, the needs, and cultural discovery? And so the cultural needs, cultural discovery really builds credibility and trust with the family. So there are three components. The first component, the strengths, are the foundation for self-efficacy when working with families. By making an inventory of strengths, celebrating accomplishments from the past, there is more confidence in accomplishing goals for the future. So identifying and communicating strengths bolsters engagement. It shows respect for the family. It motivates the family, and it really helps in terms of forming that rapport and relationship with the family early on. Care coordinators and wraparound team members may also use strengths to reframe negative concerns. For example, celebrating examples of overcoming difficult situations, such as maybe lack of housing in the past and being able to find a place to stay, or having been unemployed and then being able to find a job. So strengths it's really important in terms of helping families to understand what their assets are. The second component, needs, promotes family voice and choice. And allowing the family to identify their needs is critical in terms of the strengths, needs, culture discovery. The family court and WRAP team may recognize the need to manage anger during times of conflict, but the family may also identify the need for more quality time together, participating in activities that have meaning for their culture, such as family reunions or Sunday dinners or attending church together or family game night. And so it's important to understand that needs are not a service. So a WRAP coordinator or a family support partner may ask what needs to be different for you to have a better life. The third component, culture, plays an important role both for the family as well as the WRAP coordinator, family support partner that's working with the family. It's important for the coordinator and family support partner to learn the unique culture of the family and also to identify unique differences. For example, there may be language barriers, acculturation gaps, experiences of racial trauma. And so by identifying these unique differences, providers can address barriers and determine how culture impacts the family's response to the team and also to services. It's also important for professionals that are working with our families to be culturally self-aware of preconceived notions and biases about families that they may have and address those as well. So the cultural discovery identifies the values, the beliefs, the traditions, what's important to the family, sources of support, persons or institutions that may successfully help the family to transition after wraparound, family history, group influence, past behavior patterns, preferences such as not meeting in the home or preferring to meet at the agency or at a faith-based organization. All of these are important components to consider when conducting a strengths needs cultural discovery. Family culture has three components: values, norms, and routines. Values are those judgments about what is important to the family, such as kindness, mutual respect, hard work. Norms are like a handbook about how a family should behave, spoken and unspoken rules about how the family operates. For example, the involvement of extended family in the wraparound process. We see this quite often with African American and Hispanic and Latinx families. Understanding family roles. Who is the key decision maker in the family? How does the family demonstrate resiliency? How do they give and get support? Rituals are sets of behaviors that provide identity, such as rites of passage ceremonies, holidays, eating patterns around meal times, etc. And so these three components are critical in terms of understanding family culture. It's important to think about the cultural discovery across the life domains. And so on this slide, we have listed several of the life domains. And of course, we don't have time to go through all of them. But if we just think about family and home, you know, we could ask questions such as, how do you describe your family? Where does the family live? What is the environment that the family lives in? Is it a community where there's lots of violence? How does that impact their sense of well-being, their sense of community? Thinking about social determinants and how that impacts the family. How do you support and supervise your children? So these are examples of questions that may be asked under the domain of family and home. Here in Jacksonville, in my experience, one of the issues that we address under family home is location in terms of the city, because Jacksonville is the largest city land-wise in the contiguous United States. And so oftentimes families have difficulty getting to appointments because of transportation barriers. And so this is, under this domain is where questions are often asked about transportation, about the number of children in the family, because with Medicaid transportation, oftentimes siblings cannot travel with the child that's receiving services. And so these are all things to consider in terms of access and utilization of services. So the wraparound process, the strengths needs cultural discovery, is a continual process and may change over time. And so again, we encourage you to enroll in an actual wraparound training to get more specifics around implementing a strengths needs cultural discovery. But we just want to give you an overview and highlight of ways that this can be used in working with families. So the second process or tool is the citywide cultural assessment tool, which is a guide. It's not a series of direct questions, but it's more of a process through which culture and language-based information can be elicited from the caregiver. And the purpose of this tool is really to delve deeper into understanding, the family culture. This tool, in my experience in working with Wraparound, has been really useful because oftentimes cultural information is collected demographically, so identifying race or identifying religion or identifying migration history, but it's not deep enough where information can be used in the care plan to really address barriers and to address access issues. so in my experience in working with Wraparound, we use this tool to help our coordinators and our family partners to delve deeper into understanding, how these cultural dimensions really impact the everyday living of our youth and families. So this slide shows the key topic areas of the citywide cultural assessment tool. Language, migration, ethnic cultural background, family's role, religion, spirituality, trauma, social networks, cultural health beliefs, cross-cultural barriers, and general service delivery. And so this tool was actually a part of our wraparound chart. It was a required tool for our wraparound coordinators and for our family partners to use. And it wasn't just about the collection of the information. It was also about how are you going to integrate this cultural information into the plan of care. So how can this information be used to help our families to access services? So for example, language. Language is about identifying the form of spoken or written word used by families, whether formal or informal registered dialects, slang are used, paying close attention to language and the way people use language. But, it's really about, language access, understanding if an interpreter is needed, translation of forms needed, clarifying questions about terms, thinking about low literacy populations, and so on this slide here, you can see an example of a question that may be asked under the category or topic area of language. And what language are you most comfortable speaking, right? And so just for an example, we were working with a Hispanic Latinx family, and of course we asked this question of the mother, who was our main point of contact, and she expressed that she was comfortable speaking English, but her husband was not comfortable speaking English, and so we, of course, worked on providing interpretation services for that wraparound meeting. But once the family arrived to the meeting, much of the emphasis was on the mother, and so the next category came into play because the father made it very clear that he was the main caregiver of the family, that he was the key decision maker of the family, and he felt that he was being excluded because much of the attention and conversation was being directed to the mother. And so these are some of the cultural considerations that we should think about in terms of working with families. How does the family structure impact how we deliver services, how we communicate with families? This family also wanted the grandparents to be a part of the wraparound team. So they became a part of the natural support part of the team, so that when the family began, once they begin that transition period, that they are there and understand what's been happening in terms of family goals, the vision of the family, and moving forward and being more self-sufficient. So these questions are really critical when it comes to the delivery of services and making sure that we are being respectful and that we are acknowledging the cultural norms and beliefs and values of the family. The other thing that I really like about this particular assessment and why it has worked well in the system of care work that I've experienced is that it has a section for cultural considerations and also program organizational barriers. So, there are oftentimes, kinks and communication barriers at the service delivery level that need to be addressed, at the organizational level in terms of, policies and structures and processes. So this tool, yes, addresses, at the micro level, the relationship with the family, but also addresses organizational issues as well, so that when there's the debriefing with the entire staff or the entire wraparound team, other issues can be addressed as well. And Tiara, would you mind pulling up the citywide cultural assessment, please? So just so that you can see here some of the additional questions in terms of migration, cultural identity, family role, religion, spiritual beliefs, experiences of trauma, etc. So this resource is available for you to review. Thank you so much. Okay. So within our system of care, we've also worked in collaboration with pediatricians and clinicians in an integrative care model. And so one of the tools that many of our pediatricians are using in our pediatric residents is the HEEADSSS Adolescent Assessment. You know, we spend a lot of time, oftentimes, eliciting information from the caregiver and sort of leave our youth out. And so it was a priority, you know, in terms of being true to system of care core values of being family-driven and youth-guided, that youth assessment was being used with our adolescents. And so this was the tool that our Department of Community Pediatrics decided on. And so the HEEADSSS is a psychosocial history tool. It was adapted from Golden Ring and colleagues. It's a method of interviewing adolescents. The H stands for home environment. The E stands for education and employment, eating. The A stands for activities, peer-related activities. The D stands for drugs. The S stands for sexuality and safety. And with the most recent version of the HEEADSSS assessment, suicide and depression was added as well. So now there are 3 S's instead of 2. So it's actually HEEADSSS 3.0 Adolescent Assessment. And this assessment is endorsed by the American Academy of Pediatrics. It's been revised several times, but it is an accepted tool. Tiara, would you mind pulling up the HEEADSSS assessment, please? So this is an example of some of the questions that are asked during the HEEADSSS assessment. This is the suicide and depression section here. Do you feel stressed or anxious more than usual or more than you prefer to feel? Do you feel sad or down more than usual? And in our system of care, there were some supplemental tools that were used. The PHQ-2, which is the first 2 questions from the PHQ-9, which is it's a depression screening tool. And then also the CRAFT, which is a short clinical assessment tool designed to screen for substance use risk and problems in adolescents. So these are some of the tools that are being used in our integrative care clinic with our pediatricians. And so again, you know, this is really important that we are including youth so that we can understand their perspectives and their culture as well, and some of the behaviors, risk that are associated with that. This particular tool it's recommended that it's not used with the parent in the room. So, you know, this doesn't mean that parents are being ignored, but we do want to get information, and some of the information is sensitive. And so there are suggestions in this particular document on ways to elicit the information and ways to speak with the parent and not being offensive when asking them to leave the room. You know, we speak privately with our patients or with our youth about stressors that may appear during adolescence so that they can practice taking responsibility for their healthcare needs. So, so there is some suggestions in terms of ways to sort of balance that family-guided and youth, family-driven and youth-guided voice within clinical encounters. Thank you, Tiara. All right. This is another tool that that we've used within our system of care. It's called the Psychospiritual Assessment Tool. Oftentimes we are asking about religion from, a demographic perspective, but, this is sort of a uncomfortable topic for some providers, but we found that by asking these questions that we're able to understand families' coping skills, we're able to identify natural supports, possibly even individuals that can be a part of the wraparound team. And so beyond just asking, do you consider yourself spiritual or religious, we're also asking, what importance does faith have for you, or, who's part of your spiritual community, if that's appropriate for that particular family. And how would you like me as your provider to address your spiritual beliefs in your care? So these questions, again, help us to delve deeper in terms of, providing supports to families in a way that is culturally sensitive and appropriate for them. And just to, share a few examples, after asking these questions and delving deeper, some families would mention youth pastors and youth leaders or spiritual advisors, and again, they were welcoming to have them to be a part of the wraparound team, and so again, that became a larger network of natural supports for our families. So again, this is not about proselytizing, but again, making sure that we're ascribing to the religious or spiritual beliefs of the families that we serve. All right, so I'm going to just do one case study very quickly because I want to make sure that Catalina has enough time for the cultural formulation. But this is a case study where Sharon, she's 16 years old. She was recently diagnosed with bipolar disorder. She was involved in a conflict with another student during school and was suspended. This is Sharon's second suspension this school year. Sharon made the honor roll this semester and organized a girls' step team at school last term. She's also a youth usher at her church. Karen enjoys hanging out with her youth pastor, Miss Imani. Karen, Sharon's mother, works 2 jobs. Her father is deceased. Her father died as a result of shooting in their apartment complex 3 years ago. Sharon stays with her Nana while her mother works. She catches the bus to her Nana's house after school. The school behavioral health program suggested wraparound care coordination for Sharon. You are conducting a home visit with the family to understand their strengths, needs, and culture across the life domains. So what are some of the strengths, needs, and cultural aspects that should be considered in addressing the family goals? So if you could just, in the chat box, respond to this question, and we'll quickly just cover a few responses and then move on to Catalina. Any responses?
I think everyone's typing right now.
Okay.
Strengths of school for Sharon.
Okay.
Many natural supports, family
Okay.
and pastor schools. Nana
Okay.
is a natural support. Spiritual safety, sports.
Okay. Wonderful. So if we were to identify strengths, we can say that Sharon is a leader. Her mom is an organizer because she has child care arrangements for her daughter after school. She goes to her Nana. She taught her daughter how to, assuming to catch the bus. She's an usher at her church. She's serving others, so that's a positive characteristic. She's involved in academics, extracurricular activities. Is an extended family support system network with the Nana. And mom is employed. That's a strength as well. Some of the needs, maybe to address the trauma from loss of dad, maybe more quality time with mom because she is working 2 jobs. And in terms of culture, natural supports, we see her relationship with her extended family, her Nana, and also the involvement of her youth pastor as well as with her church. And so addressing faith and spirituality would be appropriate here as well. And I see other responses in the chat box. Build upon her positive interests, affirm positive involvement, natural supports in the home and in the community. Yes, all right. Wonderful. Okay, Catalina, I'm going to skip the next case study. And turn it back over to you.
Thank you.
Issues, okay?
Another tool that we wanted to briefly discuss, and we won't go much into depth with it, but make you guys familiar with it. We have an entire webinar devoted to it in the YouTube channel. But we wanted to present it here because it is a way to implement culture-based. If you need a tool in how to address and how to craft questions to address all of the cultural considerations that are needed, the cultural formulation interview is a good tool. It's also known as the CFI, and it was created by a multidisciplinary team from Columbia University and New York State Psychiatric Institute. It's part of the DSM-5, and it was thoroughly tested before its implementation. So it does have the benefits of some clinical validation studies. But the wonderful thing about it, it is not just for clinicians. It can be used by peer support. It can be used by RAP coordinators. It is specifically designed to be used at any level of service. It is an evidence-based tool, and it has a series of questions to assist in making person-centered cultural assessments and designed to inform diagnosis and treatment planning. It has 4 domains. The first domain is the cultural definition of the problem. The second domain is the cultural perception of cause, context, and support, and that includes cultural identity. The third domain is cultural factors that affect self-coping and past help-seeking. And the fourth domain is cultural factors that affect current help-seeking. And you can find it in your files to download under 2013 DSM-5 CFI, which is the next to last document. It's a great tool. Sorry, the next slide. It's a great tool because it allows the individual seeking services to give their own narrative, and it encourages them to more fully engage in treatment and services. In addition, it's a flexible tool that can be used by clinicians or non-clinical staff, and it can be used not just for cultural minorities. Any client, any participant can benefit from its use. And it aligns with family voice and choice values, natural supports, and community-based values, and culturally competent values by giving family youth and children and any participants the ability to voice all of their cultural formulation. And it's really in-depth and goes into various aspects. And we recommend it because it allows the individual seeking services to give their own narrative, and it encourages them to more fully engage in treatment and services. And it's a flexible tool that can be used by anyone, and so anyone can benefit from it. For those looking for something, is there one more? And those are all the wraparound principles that using this cultural formulation interview aligns with. Another tool for your toolbox is the Health Beliefs Toolkit. It is part of a toolkit created by the TA network with the assistance of Covey & Consulting. And so if you have a chance to put that link that's on the PowerPoint on the chat box, it might be easier for them to download the entire toolkit. This toolkit addresses how health beliefs why health beliefs are important, and gives various tools on how to address various health beliefs. And this is how you would look at cultural health beliefs. And one of the tools in the toolkit is called the Behavioral Health Beliefs Assessment Guiding Questions. And it's a series of questions and a guideline on a series of questions to help start a conversation with individuals seeking behavioral health care. And it's designed for caseworkers, counselors, intake specialists, therapists, everyone to take a look at it to just see what it looks like and what types of questions and the order it seeks in. It's divided into various sections that address a variety of different topic areas. And those topic areas, while we get to them, are the knowledge of illness, how cultural beliefs or health beliefs, spiritual beliefs can affect their knowledge and understanding of illness. It addresses expectations of service delivery. It has a series of questions that can help the person asking the questions explore if there's any cultural beliefs or family cultural norms that would make service delivery expectations a little different. It also talks about their experience with immigration and how that might be affecting their need to seek services. And then it talks about community beliefs, what beliefs the community shares and how those affect that individual's health beliefs. And then it looks at perceptions of behavioral health care, what they know and what they themselves, their family members and their community know and understand and believe about behavioral health care. And it's a good way to explore preconceived notions and any bias towards seeking services. And then it talks about specific spiritual beliefs that can help inform the wraparound practice and that can be considered in the care delivery and the service delivery. And it also talks about family beliefs. So again, if you want to download it, but it's available for everyone to download it. I understand that someone had a difficulty logging onto the screen. The link doesn't appear to be working. You can, I think if you try these search terms, it's the University of South Florida CLC Library Health Beliefs Toolkit. It should pop up if you try those. So again, University of South Florida CLC Library Health Beliefs Toolkit. It should pop up. And we will send it, a PDF version of it with the wrap-up email that everyone will get when we are after the conclusion of this. So we have a few minutes left, and we're going to unmute your lines to address any questions that you may have. And we just put up a correct link on the chat box.
Both just let me go get 2 bottles of spaghetti sauce. They had.
Okay. Please remember that everyone's lines have been unmuted. So if you have background noise, then please go ahead and remute your own phones. And you can also ask questions via the chat box. And there's someone's typing a question, so we'll wait for that question to pop through. Everyone's quiet now. At the end of these slides, and these slides are also available for download. The last file is the slides for today. You'll see some of the references to what the data we gave you today. We have a question. Do you have a specific tool for high fidelity wraparound strengths needs? Forget what the 2 last is. My mind just went blank. Selena, do you have an answer for that one? Is there a specific tool for high fidelity wraparound strengths needs assessment?
It's proprietary, so if you enroll in a wraparound course, then the questions are available, but because it is copyrighted, we're not allowed to share it. But there is a process and structure for eliciting the information.
And so, and another tool that you can begin to use are the ones we've provided. Sarah, can you address the question? Will we get something showing we attended this webinar? I don't know what the current status of attendance certificates is. Sarah, do we have attendance certificates? Oh, yes, you'll send your confirmation email along with the video recording. So that. Any other questions that people might have on chat box or via the phone line? I know we have some questions coming in, so I will wait for those. I know some people have provided the link to the National Wraparound Institute training and materials. Thank you for doing that, Beverly. Some things you may want to explore and resources you may want to explore. The sort of the genesis for this conversation and that toolkit of aligning wraparound and class standards came from some technical assistance that I provided in Virginia when one of their project directors said, I wish there was a way for me to help integrate, to help facilitate strategic planning by having one document that took care of the wraparound plan and the wraparound values, strategic planning, as well as the class standards. That's how the idea started flowing. So if you want to explore the strategic planning and the other levels of the class standards of implementing the CLAS standards, I urge you to go to the YouTube channel and listen to the standard and listen to those. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me. I'll direct you to specific webinars that can help you do that. Okay.
Also, a link for the Varun, the Foundations of High Fidelity Wraparound, a link to their website in the chat box.
Thank you. And you have up there the link to the survey. If you could please click on it. It's the University of Washington header on the, please link that. Thank you for attending, and keep a lookout in the PA network newsletters for our upcoming webinars. And if you haven't already signed up for Training Institutes, please sign up. We'll have several CLC-related webinars, sessions, including an institute, a 3-hour institute on class standard implementation to improve health equity. That some of you are participating in and presenting in, and we encourage everyone to attend and particularly attend that session.